Hello, class. Welcome back to another lecture. My name, as you know, is Professor POV, and today we're going to be going over what is fun in games, how you can have more fun playing your games. All right. So first, we're going to go over a lesson plan. First, we're going to talk about what is fun and what makes things fun. We're going to talk about the subjectivity of fun, which is kind of the overarching thesis of this entire thing. We're going to talk about optimization. We're going to talk about the foundations of well-being, all right, which I know sounds a little weird for a video about a video game, but it's pretty important. The ideal of perfection, all right, and why it's bad, and how you can have more fun in your games, all right? So, the titular question, what is fun? There's not, obviously, a lot of great definitions, but this is the one I like the most. It is a perception of pleasure and happiness brought on by achieving one's desires from an activity, all right? It's about what you desire from the activity that you get out of it is what makes you have this pleasure and happiness, and this comes from the APA, the American Psychological Association. So what is your desire? Obviously, number one, this is super subjective, okay? There's not going to be one uniform answer. There's not going to be anything. I'm going to list a couple examples, but they are by no means a whole list of things, all right? So is your desire to play your game with friends, all right? Is just to hang out and play with friends. Is your desire to win, all right? Is what you want to do is win, and that's the only thing you want to do. Is it to get clips? You know what I mean? Is it to, do the coolest stuff and do the coolest things in order to look as good as possible at the game? Is it to make something to watch? Are you trying to make content out of the game? As I said, there's not just one answer. You can want to play with friends, and you can want to win, and you can want to make content, right? All of those are good answers. Or are you trying to get clips and win? You know what I mean? Are you trying to, get those, spicy deflects? Or it could be all of them, or it could be a completely other set of things. But my guess is that this one right here is on usually everybody's list. Everyone wants to win. Everyone wants to see that victory screen, right? Which I get. But we're going to talk about how we can do things different, all right? So most people want to win. This leads to a couple different outcomes. It leads to the optimization of your play style, right? It leads to the continuing effort to get as good as you possibly can in order to win at your video game of choice, People want to get good at the game. People want to do as best they can. They want to do what they need to do in order to get the way they can, right? So that leads to choosing sometimes the strongest options. You see the best character in the game over and over again, all right? You see, whatever XYZ, team comp, right? You see all of these things, and that's usually out of the desire to win. And it's usually choosing the safest options in fights, you know what I mean? Choosing the best offense and the best defense, and doing what's going to get you out of dangerous situations most times, because the idea is to win at the end. However, this can create a very samey gameplay experience if you're only focusing on the win, right? Because because most people's main desire is to see that victory screen, which isn't inherently bad, by the way. There's nothing wrong with the pursuit of winning, right? Because that is it's pretty normal. We all want a competitive thing in our games, right? So this isn't bad by any stretch of the imagination. But if that's your main focus, it can lead to these kind of things, right? So what is optimization? Okay? Optimization may be perceived as a vehicle, quote unquote, that operates to maximize a person's state of functioning. So putting that in simple words, it just basically means optimization, right? Optimization is just, how do I get best at the thing I'm trying to do? You know what I mean? How do I do what I am doing as best as I possibly can to get the best possible outcome out of a situation? The state of functioning just means, how well am I doing? Right? So we move on to this graph I found that I think is probably doesn't make a ton of sense to everybody, but it's a good representation of what I'm going to talk about. So when we talk about activation, we're talking about what leads you to want to optimize, right? So it's the optimizing agency. What are you trying to optimize for? Is it for self-efficacy? Is it for educational purposes? Is it for a social relationship? Are you trying to win someone over? Are you trying to impress your friends? Stuff like that. And so that source of our desire to optimize, we need energy for that, right? And so when that energy happens, how are we going to do the optimization? Is it through intrinsic motivation? Is it through effective functioning, personal resolve, mental strength, effort expenditure? All of these attributes play into the sustain, and that it's not that kind of arousal. Arousal in psychological terms is just a heightened state, besides a neutral state, right? Which turns into like, how well can we optimally function under these considerations? So like, if I do not have the energy to put time into a game, I'm not going to try and optimize it that much because I don't have time for that. I don't have the ability to optimize it the way I want to. So what's going to happen is I don't have the energy for it. So my optimal functioning isn't going to be that better from where I started. Like if this right here is the starting point, I might reach right here. All right. But let's say I have the energy. I have the wants even to do stuff. I might make it all the way over here. You know what I mean? It's about how much energy you can put into it. So now that we know a little bit more about optimization, why it's not necessarily a bad thing, people should want to, get better at what they do, but it shouldn't be like the only reason, right? So we're going to talk about, the foundations of well-being, okay? And as I'm going to start listing stuff out, you're going to realize, oh, this kind of tracks to what I think about, maybe even subconsciously, when I play a game of For Honor, right? So your social and emotional competency. This is huge. Think about it for a second, When you're playing a game, you want to feel competent at your game, right? You're engaging through strengths. So if you don't feel like you're competent, you're not going to feel good. Because the idea is you want to be competent at what you're doing. You want to be good at what you're doing. So when you do not feel like you're competent, you don't feel good. And when you don't feel good, it's hard to have positive emotions, which impacts your well-being. And then, positive relationships, which might seem like it doesn't make sense, but when you think about it a little bit more, a relationship isn't just with someone you know, it's with the people you don't know too, right? Like if it's a random person in a match, you have a relationship with that person, not like a well-built one, but there's a relationship there. So if they're being toxic, suddenly you start feeling bad because there's suddenly a negative relationship going on. There's suddenly a bad thing that's happening, and it can harm your overall well-being. And so you want to engage through strengths. You want to engage this game that you're playing through the strengths, right? You want to feel like you're doing good. You want to engage in the game in a way that's fun, because when you're doing good, it's more fun because you're engaging through strength in the game, right? And so at the end of the day, it's all about a sense of meaning and purpose in the game. If I don't feel like I have a meaning to play the game, if I load it up and I'm like, damn, why am I doing this? Why am I playing this game? How can I feel better about playing this game? You're looking for a sense of meaning and purpose throughout your activity because you're trying to feel good about yourself. And in the attempt to feel good about yourself, you're trying to tick off all these boxes. You're trying to feel competent. You're trying to feel good. You're trying to build good relationships with your teammates or your friends that you're playing with. You're trying to engage with the game through what you're good at. So if you're good at fours, good at ones, stuff like that. And at the end of the day, you're trying to find a sense of meaning to why you're playing the game, right? Why you're doing what you're doing. And so it's very important to try and, click off some of the boxes to have fun. And we're going to get to how you can maximize that and get away from some bad thought patterns that could make you not have fun, So the ideal perfection. Perfection isn't possible, but neither is your best play. Now, you might say, I'm actually at 100% form all the time. I'm never bad at the game. And I'm happy for you. But the reality is that you will never play perfect. And you very, very rarely will always play at your 100% best. All right? And it's not reasonable to expect that of yourself, you know? You got to change your expectation to something more realistic. Because I can't expect myself to always be at 100% of what I good, because sometimes I've had a long day. Sometimes I didn't drink enough water. Sometimes I just didn't wake up the correct way that day to play my best. And that's okay. You know, yeah, I can't expect my 100%, this is the tip top of my gameplay experience, because that changes day by day. So instead of, a we have to win mindset, it should be a I'm going to try my best mindset. It's not about, what the other team does, right? Because you can't let those people control your fun. It's about, I'm going to try my best no matter what. My teammates are bad, I can't control that. They're different people. The enemy team's way better than me. It doesn't matter how good the enemy team is. It's about how good you're going to do in the game. So, you can't. Another thing is idealizing clips and stuff you see online, as they only show a small bit of what, the actual gameplay experience is like. I posted a short where I was doing killer at the game, right? Let's say, it gets a bunch of views. I feel good about myself. But at the end of the day, I can still log on under all the almost exact same circumstances, like with even the exact same opponent, and I'll lose because I'm cherry picking what I want. So you can't expect your gameplay to always be an idealistic, I'm always going to be Faram. I'm always going to be Havoc, I'm always going to be King Misty. Those aren't realistic expectations for yourself. And, don't get mad at making a mistake. Even a mistake that is involving these tenets. You know what I mean? Like, if you feel like, man, I should be playing like that, don't be like, no, I can't think like that. Stupid. You have to be like, you know what? I need to change my mindset a little bit. I need to step back a little bit, and this is what I can change. And then learning how to step by step make that change is very, very important. And so here's a couple. So that's it for today's lesson. We're going back to the reference list real quick. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you learned something, or I hope you gained something from this. As I said earlier, this was a very fun slideshow to make, and I was able to flex some of the things that I've learned within my school days, and I hope you all, as I said, learned something from this. Don't forget to go like and subscribe. Thank you all so much, and I'll see you in the next lecture. Goodbye.